The story opens with a massive glowing blue tree. The protagonist reflects that in the real world, people eventually run into walls of talent, race, and even the heart itself. As he says this, he raises a shield and protects himself from something strange approaching him. He continues, explaining that this is the story of someone who spent his life doing nothing but building walls, until someone finally broke through them. A young woman appears beside him, fighting together with him against a monster. She tells him to watch carefully because she wants to show him something. At her signal, the protagonist reacts immediately. The two move together. The young woman launches forward and drives all of her power into one final attack. Wrapped in destructive energy, she delivers a lightning-infused strike directly into the monster. The impact tears through the obstacle before them and breaks apart every barrier standing in the way. Watching this, the protagonist concludes that moving forward means smashing those walls to pieces. The story then shifts to an ordinary school day. Okabe enters his classroom and notices someone being bullied. Someone nearby quietly tells them to stop. Okabe notices the bully grabbing another student by the neck, but tries to ignore it and continue walking. The bully notices him and questions what he wants. Okabe quickly backs off and says it is nothing. As he tries to leave, the bully calls him back and moves aggressively, but someone steps in. Kira arrives and blocks the confrontation. Remaining calm, he tells Dojo to stop bullying and asks how many times he has to repeat himself. The bully dismisses it as harmless teasing and pressures Mikage to agree. Unable to resist, Mikage quietly goes along with it. The atmosphere immediately shifts. The girls in the classroom begin praising Kira, admiring how dependable and impressive he looks. Okabe watches silently. Inside his head, he blames himself. He believes he made things worse and only caused the bullying to become harsher. All he wanted was to stop it. All he wanted was to protect Mikage. Before his thoughts continue, Shinomiya calls out to him. Okabe turns in surprise. Looking at him, she comments that he looks like someone who just opened Pandora's box. Okabe awkwardly denies it and says it is not that bad. Shinomiya accepts the answer and leaves it there. Left alone again with his thoughts, Okabe convinces himself that this is how things should be. Nothing good comes from stepping into bullying. Only special people become heroes. Staying out of it is the correct answer. Then, something strange happens. The classroom begins shaking. Students panic as the floor starts glowing and strange patterns spread beneath them. Some think it is an earthquake. Others realize too late that they are being swallowed by the light. The entire class is transported somewhere else. Okabe struggles to process what happened. Just moments ago, they had been sitting in class. Now, they find themselves collapsed across the red carpet of a luxurious hall inside an unfamiliar medieval castle. Confusion spreads through the room. At the top of the stairs sits a king, calmly observing them beside his advisor. The king welcomes them and thanks them for answering the summons. He addresses them as heroes from another world. The room erupts into reactions. Some question what is happening. Others freeze after hearing the word heroes. One student wonders if this is one of those cliché ice guy summons. As everyone panics, Kira steps forward. As class representative, he says he will hear them out first. The king notices his composure and praises him for staying calm despite his age. Then he turns to the man beside him. He gives a single order. Toll steps forward and begins to explain. Toll steps forward and introduces himself as the summoner. He explains that this world, Erisphere, is on the brink of collapse. Monsters and demons that prey on humans continue to spread under the command of the Demon Lord. The kingdom has resisted with everything it has, but their enemy's strength has become overwhelming. As a last resort, they use summoning magic to bring heroes from another world. Toll then reveals that during the journey between worlds, skills awakened inside each of them. Kira listens carefully before asking what a skill actually is. With a smile, Toll explains that a skill is a special power born directly from a person's heart. To demonstrate, he raises a glowing blue crystal orb. He explains that these powers become powerful weapons and asks Kira to offer his hand. Kira reaches out. The moment his hand touches the crystal, a brilliant golden light erupts across the hall. Everyone is stunned. Toll reacts immediately and announces that Kira possesses the power of radiance, a skill that commands light and drives back darkness. To him, it is a power worthy of a hero. Kira quietly processes the feeling. As he accepts the power, light gathers in his hand and forms a glowing sword. He realizes this is what a skill feels like. Excitement spreads instantly. The students rush to test their own abilities. One after another, different powers appear: flames, wind, electricity, and countless variations. Toll continues the evaluations and calls for the next person. Shinomiya steps forward. While observing the process, she quietly concludes that the crystal uses appraisal magic to project and identify skills. As the runes react to her, Toll's expression changes. He announces that her ability appears to be a rare sage-type skill with exceptional potential for mastering magic. Her classmates react exactly as expected. They praise the top honor student and say someone like Shinomiya receiving an extraordinary skill only makes sense. After finishing, Toll asks whether everyone is gone. Shinomiya turns and signals for the next person. It is Okabe's turn. He steps forward nervously. Quietly, he thinks that if he also receives a skill, maybe he can finally change. Okabe reaches toward the crystal. Nothing happens. He touches it again and waits. No light appears. No reaction. Confused and increasingly uneasy, he asks what his skill is. Toll answers without hesitation. Okabe does not have one. Okabe freezes. Toll repeats himself and bluntly states that without a skill, he is useless. The room immediately erupts. Students react in disbelief and realize he is the only one without an ability. Okabe drops to his knees. The words do not register at first, but the reality slowly settles in. He has no power, no skill, nothing. The king moves on as if nothing happened. Now that everyone has obtained their abilities, he shifts the discussion to the demon lord. He promises treasure, power, and any reward they desire. One student questions whether they truly mean anything. Toll confirms it. Their situation is that desperate. For the future of the world, he asks them to fight at their side. Kira looks around and calmly concludes that they do not really have another choice. Toll thanks them and leads the class deeper into the castle. He says he will show them the enemy they are expected to face. Soon, they arrive before a cage. Inside stands a long blue-haired demon restrained under the watch of two knights. Toll explains that this is the kind of demon they will be fighting. One student immediately becomes excited and suggests killing it to test their new ability. Then, something changes. Okabe notices movement in the air. His expression shifts. They are under attack. At the same moment, the bully becomes excited instead of cautious. Treating the situation like a tutorial, he activates his skill. Filled with confidence from his new strength, he charges forward and attacks. But the moment he makes contact, his arm is instantly destroyed. His scream echoes through the hall. Panic spreads. Students begin shouting for everyone to stay calm and respond carefully. Then, one of the enemies rushes straight toward Okabe. Terror takes over. He drops to the ground and desperately thinks that he does not want to die in a place like this. A slash of glowing blue energy tears through the air toward him. The winged attacker flies past, then unexpectedly turns back. Her glowing eyes lock onto Okabe. Because somehow he survived. The enemy rides past on a dragon and appears ready to finish Okabe, but at the last moment, changes course and chooses not to attack. Okabe collapses to the floor in shock, unable to understand what just happened. The scene immediately shifts. Kira steps forward with confidence and anger, raising his hand and declaring that useless deadweight should stay out of the way. Okabe remains on the ground, silently grinding his teeth. Then the battle begins. Kira and the others charge forward and engage the attackers. As chaos spreads around him, Okabe can only watch. Everything feels unreal. Only a few hours earlier, he believed his normal life would continue exactly as always. Now, he stands in another world completely powerless. Meanwhile, Kira attacks repeatedly but suddenly realizes something. The enemy did not escape. It chose to leave, as if it intentionally let them survive. After the battle ends, the damage becomes clear. Everyone is injured. Toll quietly thinks to himself that he never expected demons to attack like this and wonders whether they learned the kingdom's knights had been deployed elsewhere. Kira approaches and reports that Hazuna's healing cannot keep up. Hosanna herself is already injured. Toll immediately orders the medical unit to be called. He looks over the group. Everyone is badly hurt, everyone except one person. His eyes stop on Okabe. Confused, Okabe looks up. Before anyone explains, the bully storms over. He grabs Okabe by the collar and accuses him of using everyone else's shields. Okabe immediately denies it, but the bully slams him to the ground and demands an explanation. If everyone fought and got injured, why is Okabe the only one without a scratch? The accusation spreads instantly. People begin asking whether he hid the whole time. Some say that even without a skill, he could have at least acted as a shield. Others openly call him a coward. Okabe quietly tries to object, but no one listens. The crowd turns colder. People tell him to shut up. Some call what he did unforgivable. Others tell him to disappear. Then, a flash of light appears above him. Kira steps forward holding his sword. Looking down at Okabe, he says this is how the entire class feels and declares that he will be the one to judge him. Okabe panics and tries to explain, but Kira cuts him off. He says he has no interest in hearing excuses from a coward and tells him to get out of his sight. As Kira raises his sword, someone nearby wonders if he is actually going to kill him. Before anything happens, Shinomiya steps in. She calmly points out that doing that would make Kira a murderer. Kira smiles and dismisses the idea. That was not what he meant. Immediately, the class gives its answer. One after another, the students decide that Okabe should be expelled. They demand that he leave. Toll steps into the discussion. He says that if this is what everyone wants, he will personally handle it. He admits he does not like doing this, but the morale of the heroes matters. Then he grabs Okabe by the collar. Toll announces that Okabe will be sent to the Waste Cavern, a filthy dungeon overflowing with monsters. Mockingly, he describes it as a paradise where Okabe can enjoy his final sightseeing in another world. To him, even a pebble must be removed if it blocks the path. Then he coldly tells Okabe to struggle inside the walls he built for himself. Toll grabs Okabe by the collar without hesitation. A portal opens. Before Okabe can react, Toll throws him into it. His surroundings disappear instantly. Behind him, the room erupts with relief and celebration. Most of the class welcomes his removal. Only Shinomiya watches quietly with visible concern. The scene shifts. Okabe crashes into a dark and ancient hall. The space stretches endlessly ahead, filled with shadows and the presence of lurking monsters. He struggles to stand and looks around in shock. Then, he notices something staring directly at him. Okabe immediately realizes something is wrong. Before he can process it, a two-headed monster charges toward him. Panic takes over. Okabe runs. His terrified screams echo through the empty hall. He hides briefly and looks around in disbelief, unable to understand what kind of place this is. Trying to move carefully, he quietly searches for a way out, but another monster suddenly attacks. Okabe barely reacts in time. He stumbles away and realizes there is no escape. Nearby, he spots a broken sword. With no other choice, he picks it up and charges. He refuses to die in a place like this, but the attack misses. His attempt fails completely. He turns and runs again, only to realize the first monster has already appeared behind him. Now, both creatures chase him. As he runs, frustration and regret start building. If only he had a skill, if only things had been different, then everything suddenly goes silent. A blue light appears. A hexagonal shield forms in front of him and blocks the incoming attack. Okabe freezes. Then a memory returns. Back then, something similar happened. Slowly, he stands. He raises his hand and focuses. A realization finally reaches him. He understands. He always had a skill. It simply never awakened properly. His hand begins glowing. This power belongs to him. His own skill. The monster attacks again. This time, Okabe moves. His inherited ability reveals itself. The power to create solid barriers. He rushes forward and strikes. As he fights, he realizes something. If the enemy is stronger, then he can turn that strength against them. The word from earlier flash through his mind. The ridicule. The laughter. Being called insane. Being called trash. But instead of breaking him, those words push him forward. Okabe steadies himself. With this power, he can force them to take those words back. Now driven by anger, confidence, and a new purpose, he makes a decision. No matter what happens, he will escape this place alive. As his resolve takes shape, the scene quietly shifts. Deep within the forest, a new young woman appears. Her identity remains unknown. Back in the dungeon, Okabe walks forward through the dark labyrinth. Dozens of defeated monsters slowly fade into the air behind him. After an unknown amount of time, he finally reaches the end. Ahead of him, a bright exit. Breathing heavily, he stretches his arms toward the light with relief written across his bruised face. He wonders how many days have passed. Crossing through the stone ruins, he steps outside. A cold night breeze greets him. Under a sky full of stars, an enormous forest stretches endlessly in every direction. Exhausted but grateful to have survived, Okabe slowly walks through the trees. Looking around at the endless scenery, he realizes he finally escaped. But instead of freedom, it feels like standing in the middle of a sea of trees. Eventually, he finds a pond. He kneels and drinks. After everything he went through, he quietly admits to himself he is still alive. For a moment, he stares at the sky and forgets the pain. Then suddenly, something strikes him from behind. A small creature jumps at him and sends him forward. Before he hits the ground, his barrier activates automatically. A blue protective dome surrounds him and completely absorbs the impact. Looking at the barrier, Okabe starts organizing his thoughts. Without this skill, he knows he would already be dead. He replays several battles in his head and starts understanding how his ability works. His skill allows him to generate barriers. Unlike Kira, whose light naturally pushes things away, his power creates walls. He realizes he can create multiple barriers and adjust their size, but there seems to be a limit to how many can exist at once. For a brief moment, he wonders whether his classmates would finally admit he has value now. But he immediately rejects the thought. That would never happen. The memories return. Trash. Coward. Get lost. Then more voices follow. Useless. Coward. Okabe laughs quietly at himself. After everything that happened, he reaches a conclusion. Getting involved with people only leads to disappointment. From now on, he will survive alone. Using a barrier as protection, Okabe falls asleep. Morning comes. He suddenly wakes to a distant sound. At first, he assumes it is another monster. Using his barriers carefully, he moves closer to investigate. Then, he sees an explosion. Confused, he wonders whether monsters are fighting each other. But then he hears it. A child's voice calling for its mother. Okabe immediately reacts. Why would there be a child in a place like this? Following the sound, he arrives at a clearing. There, a white wolf with green fur stands protectively in front of her child. Across from them is a giant green lizard monster. The wolf quietly admits she never expected things to become this bad. The child calls out to her. Hidden behind a tree, Okabe suddenly realizes the voice he heard earlier belonged to a monster. Before he can process it, the giant lizard charges. The mother immediately moves to shield her child and tells the child to stay back. The giant lizard attacks. The mother wolf tries to protect her child, but takes the hit directly and collapses. Hidden behind a tree, Okabe watches and grinds his teeth. His first thought is to leave. He already knows how this ends. Trying to act like a good person only creates trouble. Helping others is nothing more than fake kindness and self-satisfaction. There is no reason to walk into danger on purpose. Those thoughts echo together with memories from his past. But before he can turn away, the monster attacks again. The injured mother wolf cannot move. The child cries out desperately for her. The monster closes in to finish both of them. Then Okabe moves. Without thinking further, he rushes forward and throws up his barrier. The attack crashes into the blue shield. Okabe successfully blocks it and protects both the mother and her child. The mother wolf stares at him in surprise. A human child stepped in to save them. Okabe pushes the monster back with his barrier. Then he pauses. Looking at what he just did, a thought appears. Even someone like him can actually be useful. Before he can process it, the monster opens its mouth. A beam of light fires toward him. Okabe blocks it immediately, but the pressure is overwhelming. The barriers strain under the repeated attacks. Then one beam slips through. The child is hit. The mother instantly panics. Okabe grits his teeth. At this rate, he knows he cannot keep defending forever. The mother wolf calls out to him. A green aura begins gathering around her. She explains that she repays what she receives and returns what is given. With that resolve, she offers to distract the monster so Okabe can escape with her child. Okabe refuses. That will not be necessary. Instead, he focuses on the incoming beam. A realization strikes him. If his barriers can block force, then maybe they can redirect it. He gathers his power into his hands. Even this beam, he can send it back. His skill evolves. Variable barrier, morph. The energy collides against the shield. Blue panels begin appearing and positioning themselves around the battlefield. The lizard pauses in confusion. Then, Okabe activates the new function. The reflected beam bounces across the barriers and returns directly at the monster. The attack strikes with full force. The lizard is consumed by its own power. Silence follows. Okabe drops to his knees and catches his breath. He did it. Looking at his hands, he realizes his barriers can be used in more ways than he thought. There are still abilities left to discover. Then he notices the mother wolf. Her strength is already fading. She quietly says this is as far as she can go. With her remaining strength, she asks the kind human child to take care of her daughter. Then, she passes away. The injured child is left behind. Okabe freezes. Once again, he could not save everyone. Looking at the wounds, he realizes they are serious. Treatment is needed immediately. If only there were a town nearby. Then, small glowing particles begin appearing in the air. Okabe notices them drifting through the atmosphere. Confused, he quietly wonders what they are. After leaving the dungeon behind, Okabe continues walking through the endless forest while carrying the injured baby wolf. Following the trail of mysterious lights becomes his only guide. Days pass, but no matter how long he walks, the scenery barely changes, and it feels like he is not getting anywhere. Exhaustion slowly catches up to him. Then his eyes widen. Far in the distance, he finally spots the outline of a town. For the first time in days, relief reaches his face. He immediately heads toward it. As soon as he arrives, several armed men carrying swords and axes stop him. They ask whether he really came out of the forest labyrinth. According to them, once someone enters that place, they never return. It is considered forbidden territory. Hearing that, Okabe realizes just how dangerous that forest actually was. Still carrying the injured wolf, he decides to focus on something more urgent. He asks whether they have any healing salve and explains that he only needs a little. One man says he has some, but another interrupts. The men quietly look Okabe over and notice that he does not look like an adventurer. They decide they can demand something in return. They agree to give him medicine, but not for free. Okabe understands their point. The problem is that he does not have anything valuable. After checking his pockets, he finds a small, glowing orange orb. Curious, he pulls it out. The moment the men see it, their expressions change. They immediately demand it as payment. Not knowing its value, Okabe agrees without hesitation. Before the exchange happens, someone interrupts. A young woman wearing a red cape steps in and immediately asks whether he has lost his mind. She explains that the item is hardened sap from an amber tree compressed at an extremely high density, an S-rank rare ingredient. Compared to it, the healing salve is practically worthless. Okabe is stunned. To him, it was simply something he happened to find. The men become irritated. Their chance to get the item disappears. One of them asks whether she is trying to ruin the deal. The woman removes her cape. The men immediately stop caring about the sap. Their attention shifts entirely toward her appearance. Okabe tries to interrupt, but they ignore him and start making comments instead. Then they go further. One of them suggests taking her instead. The moment she hears that, she moves. Before the first man can react, she kicks him directly and drops him. The second pulls out his sword. He does not last any longer. She strikes him immediately and sends him to the ground as well. The entire fight ends almost instantly. Looking annoyed more than angry, she comments that she's tired of dealing with thugs like them. Okabe watches in surprise. She took down armed men with her bare hands. As she turns to leave, she pauses and gives him advice. She tells him she does not know where he came from, but he should stop trusting strangers so easily. Okabe immediately stops her. He thanks her for helping him and tries to offer something in return. She refuses. She says she is not interested in making friends. Thinking he offended her, Okabe apologizes. At that moment, the injured baby wolf lets out a painful sound. Okabe immediately comforts the child and promises to treat the injuries soon. He asks for a little more patience. The woman lets out a quiet sigh. She tells him to do whatever he wants because she is heading home. But instead of staying behind, Okabe follows. As they continue talking, he explains that he crossed the forest labyrinth alone while protecting the baby wolf. The woman stops. Her expression changes. She cannot believe someone escaped that place alive. Until now, she assumed he was just an ordinary boy who got tricked. Now she starts questioning what he actually is. Okabe hesitates before giving an honest answer. He says it may sound hard to believe, but he came from another world. To his surprise, she is not shocked. After hearing it, she simply nods and says she understands. The woman's reaction makes sense to Okabe. To her, his unusual abilities fit naturally with someone arriving from another world. Still surprised, Okabe asks whether she is really not shocked. She calmly explains that people from other worlds are not rare here. That answer catches him off guard. Until now, he believed he and his classmates were the only ones summoned. He asks if that means they were not the only group brought into this world. Before the conversation continues, the injured baby wolf slowly regains consciousness. Still weak, the child quietly calls for her mother. Another surprise follows. The baby wolf can speak. Okabe reacts immediately and realizes she is awake. The child looks at him and remembers that he was the one who saved her. Okabe lowers his eyes and tells her the truth. Even though he saved her, he could not save her mother. He apologizes. The child quietly breaks down and calls for her mother. Watching her, the young woman realizes the child lost her parent too. She gently shifts the conversation and explains that she finished treating the injuries for now before asking how she feels. The child says she feels fine and thanks her. Okabe sincerely thanks her as well. Then the woman realizes they never introduced themselves. She tells him her name, Liana Lindau. Okabe introduces himself in return. His name is Minato Okabe. Then both of them turn to the child and ask if she has a name. The little wolf hesitates. Names are unfamiliar to her. She remembers only being called things like my child and my dear child. As a beast, she explains that she never had a name. Okabe becomes curious and asks what kind of creature she is. She admits she does not know. Liana studies her for a moment and says she feels like she has seen a creature like this somewhere before. She starts trying to remember and throws out different possibilities. The guesses gradually turn into random combinations. Eventually, Okabe makes a suggestion. How about Pom-Pomera? Liana immediately complains that the name sounds lazy. But unexpectedly, the child's face lights up. She raises her little arms and happily accepts it. From now on, she wants to be called Pomera, and she asks Okabe to call her by that name. Seeing her reaction, even Liana gives in and admits she seems to like it. After that, Okabe asks what happened. Weren't monsters supposed to coexist instead of attacking each other? Pomera quietly explains that things were not always like this. Everyone used to live peacefully, but more and more monsters suddenly started becoming violent. Okabe understands. She lost her parent, lost her home, and ended up alone, just like him. Liana looks at both of them and asks what they plan to do now. Okabe goes quiet. The memories return. Trash. Weakling. D. The words from his classmates repeat in his mind. But instead of breaking him, they give him direction. There is something he needs to do. Before that, he needs to understand how this world works. And he cannot abandon Pomera. Hearing that, Pomera happily jumps forward and hugs him. Liana watches for a moment before deciding something. If they continue like this, they will eventually starve. So she offers to teach both of them the basics of surviving in this world. Okabe thanks her and says she is kinder than she looks. Caught off guard, Liana immediately tries to deny it. Blushing slightly, she insists she is only helping on a whim. The scene then shifts elsewhere. Inside a tavern in town, two young men push open the door and walk in confidently. Unlike Okabe, they carry themselves with complete confidence. One of them laughs and compares the situation to a fantasy game, joking that taverns are where party members usually appear and wondering whether there is a beautiful mage nearby. They look around the room and call out to the bartender, demanding to be shown around. Startled, the bartender nervously asks who they are. The two exchange confident grins, then proudly introduce themselves. They are heroes from another world. And if this world were a game, they would be the protagonists.
After selling the amber orb, Okabe buys a new outfit. Liana looks him over and admits it suits him well. Pomera immediately agrees, happily saying it fits her master perfectly. Looking at his new clothes, Okabe reflects that he never expected the amber orb to sell for such a high price. Without wasting time, Liana starts picking out more equipment for him, suggesting armor and a shield next. Okabe politely refuses, insisting he already has everything he needs. Liana warns him that cutting corners on equipment usually usually ends badly. Even so, Okabe remains convinced he does not need anything else. Holding the gear in her hands, Liana smirks and admits she is not exactly the best person to lecture others about equipment. Curious about their next destination, Okabe asks where they are heading. Liana explains that there is only one place adventurers go to find work, the Adventurers Guild. Still unfamiliar with this world system, Okabe asks what adventurers actually do. Liana explains that they take on all kinds of jobs, but dungeon exploration is the most important. Okabe still does not understand why dungeons are so valuable. Instead of answering directly, Liana asks what allowed humans, despite being unable to use magic naturally, to prosper. Okabe thinks for a moment. Since he cannot use magic even in this world, he guesses the answer might be knowledge. Meanwhile, Palmyra excitedly imagines food and guesses it must be something delicious. Liana laughs and reveals that the answer is magic. She explains that items containing sealed magic are known as magic tools, then pulls a large piece of meat from her bag as an example. The moment Palmyra sees it, she immediately jumps over and starts eating. Watching the scene, Okabe finally understands that dungeons are filled with valuable magic tools. Liana confirms it and points out that anyone who survived Forest Labyrinth alone must already be incredibly strong. Palmyra proudly praises Okabe as a powerhouse while continuing to eat. Liana nods in agreement and declares that this works out perfectly. She intends to become the world's greatest adventurer, and she expects Okabe to help her achieve that goal. The three continue toward the Adventurers Guild. Upon arriving, they find two young men arguing with a female employee at the counter. The employee repeatedly explains that she cannot accept their request. The two men loudly insist that heroes are offering to work and complain that the tavern sent them there for nothing. Watching from a distance, Okabe recognizes them immediately. They are Tezuka Shoto and Sato Masaki. Tezuka once quit the baseball club after a fight caused by a retaliatory beanball incident. Sato left after being disciplined for intentionally throwing dangerous pitches. Okabe remembers that after the scandal, both of them had become unusually quiet. His thoughts are interrupted when the employee asks whether they have adventurer licenses. Ignoring the question, the two continue insisting that being heroes should be enough. Tezuka aggressively repeats that they are heroes, while the frightened employee calmly explains that even heroes cannot accept guild requests without proper licenses. Growing impatient, Sato slams his fist onto the counter and demands that they stop arguing and hurry up, startling the employee. The guild employee is visibly frightened by the two men's aggressive behavior. Before the situation escalates further, Okabe steps in and calmly tells them that enough is enough. Both men turn around in irritation. First, they fail to recognize him. Then they freeze. Okabe is alive. Liana looks at him in surprise and asks if he knows them. Okabe quietly confirms that he does. The two immediately shift their attention to Liana. Captivated by her appearance, they begin making crude remarks about her. Liana responds with a cold glare, openly expressing her disgust and making it clear that she cannot stand people like them. Tezuka's expression darkens. He activates his skill. Two magical hands suddenly appear and grab Liana, catching her completely off guard. Tezuka laughs while Sato praises how ridiculous his skill is. Liana immediately raises her hand, preparing to retaliate. Before she can attack, Okabe stops her. Looking directly at Tezuka, he asks whether they really believe they can do whatever they want simply because they are in another world. Tezuka answers with a mocking grin, insults Okabe, and activates his skill once again. As his ability Double Play, Twin Out, appears, people nearby immediately recognize the danger and begin fleeing. Ignoring them, Tezuka launches his attack. Okabe raises his barrier. The attack rebounds through his defensive skill and strikes Tezuka's own hand instead. Tezuka cries out in pain and drops to one knee, clutching his injured arm. Watching his partner suffer, Sato loses his temper. He activates his own skill, All Pitch, Dead Ball Strike Out ***, and launches a massive flaming projectile straight at Okabe. Okabe immediately uses Reflect. The attack bounces off his barrier and races back towards Sato, narrowly missing him. Realizing what happened, Sato is stunned. He understands that ordinary solid attacks cannot overcome Okabe's defense so easily. Refusing to back down, he attacks again with even greater force. Okabe quickly analyzes the situation. If simple reflection is not enough, then he will change the barrier itself. He activates ** variable barrier, morph, rebound, asterisk. The transformed barriers redirect the attack with overwhelming force. The counterattack slams into both Tezuka and Seido, sending them crashing to the ground. Everyone watching is left speechless. The boy they believe to be powerless is displaying an extraordinary ability. Standing over the defeated pair, Okabe calmly asks if that was everything they had. Still lying on the ground, Seido stares at him in disbelief. According to everything they knew, Okabe was supposed to be useless. Ignoring the complaint, Okabe grabs Seido by the collar and pulls him up. His tone hardens as he demands answers. Did they come to this town alone? Where are Kira and the others? Terrified, Seido admits that he does not know. Fighting the demon lord sounded like too much trouble, so he and Tezuka abandon the group. That is all he knows. After answering, he collapses back to the floor. Okabe releases his collar. From what he learned, the rest of his classmates cannot be too far away. Palmyra jumps excitedly and proudly declares that her master is invincible. The guild employee sincerely thanks Okabe for saving everyone. Liana quietly watches him before admitting that he is far more capable than she first believed. Just then, another man enters the guild. Dressed in a white suit beneath a blue cape with blonde hair, he immediately catches Liana's attention, and her expression suggests she recognizes him. After observing the fight, he praises Okabe's defensive skill and quick thinking, saying that blocking attacks like that is no easy feat. Impressed, he invites Okabe and his companions to join him, explaining that he has the perfect job for someone with his ability. According to his introduction, he is Craze Selkar the leader of the B-rank party Wise Cat's Paw Craze explains that a dungeon containing a teleportation magic tool has recently been discovered. The mention of teleportation immediately catches Okabe's attention. Standing behind Craze are two companions. One is a man in a black cape, introduced as Shamal Shamjammer the vice leader of Wise Cat's Paw. The other is a green-haired woman named Mint Valletta another member of the same B-rank party. With a grin, Shamal jokes that Craze is obviously only there because of Liana. Mint joins in playfully, teasing Craze and telling him not to get carried away. Embarrassed by their comments, Craze awkwardly changes the subject. Liana's expression immediately reveals that she already knows the group. Rather than being pleased to see them, she looks irritated and mutters that it is him again. Okabe notices her reaction and asks if she knows them. Liana explains that Craze simply refuses to give up. She apologizes to Okabe before making her decision clear. She has no intention of joining Craze's party and plans to continue traveling with only Okabe. Shamal pats Craze on the shoulder, joking that he has been rejected once again. Mint joins the teasing, wondering whether he will ever learn. Completely dejected, Craze complains that Liana has turned him down every time he is asked. Still trying to persuade her, he points out that this would be her first time teaming up with anyone since her previous party. Curious, Okabe asks what he means. Shamal answers that Liana's former party was wiped out. Mint quietly adds that not a single member returned alive. The revelation explains why Liana has been traveling alone. Around them, people begin whispering among themselves. Some label her a party killer and question why anyone would invite her. Craze immediately defends Liana, saying that tragedies like that happen in the life of an adventurer. Liana quietly responds that she simply could not save. Then she turns to Okabe. If the rumors make him uncomfortable, she tells him he is free to join Craze's party instead. Okabe falls silent. The insults aimed at Liana remind him of the way his own classmates treated him. The words party killer echo in his mind alongside memories of being called useless and watching Kira turn against him. Looking around at the people spreading rumors, Okabe quietly concludes that they are no different from those who judged him without understanding anything. Having made his decision, he refuses to abandon Liana the way he had once been abandoned. He tells her that he is staying with her. Liana is caught off guard by Okabe's suggestion, visibly flustered. Okabe quietly thinks that if they achieve results as a party, all the rumors will disappear. The more witnesses they have, the better. He also wants to learn more about the mysterious teleportation magic tool, so he proposes bringing Craze and the others along. Craze immediately jumps in, insisting that had been his plan from the beginning. Liana lets out an annoyed sigh before reluctantly agreeing. A short while later, Okabe and Liana leave the cabin with Craze and his party following behind. Outside, they find a crowd gathered around several captured demons. Bound by chains and escorted by soldiers, the demon women and children are pelted with stones by the townspeople. The sight leaves Okabe disturbed. Liana quietly recognizes them them as captured demons. Craze, however, coldly remarks that considering how many humans demons have killed, they deserve it. His attention suddenly shifts to one of the prisoners. Confused, he notices that one of the women appears completely human. He wonders whether she was a human seduced by demons, or perhaps a demon capable of mimicking a human. Curious, Okabe asks what he means. Mint explains that, according to an old fairy tale, those who continue committing evil eventually become demons. Shamal suddenly jumps in from behind with a loud shout, startling Pomera. Laughing, Craze says there are even stories about demon children replacing human ones, and that the captured demons are simply pretending to be innocent. At that moment, one of the young demon girls notices Okabe. With trembling hands, she reaches toward him and weakly begs for God's help. Her desperate expression freezes Okabe in place. Even if they are supposed to be enemies, he cannot believe anyone deserves such treatment. As he instinctively reaches toward the girl, Liana urgently shouts for him to stop. Before either of them can react, Craze swings his sword. The blade flashes. The girl's head falls to the ground. Okabe stands frozen as blood splashes across the street. Calmly wiping his sword clean, Craze tells him not to be deceived by appearances. No matter how helpless they look, demons are murderous devils beyond saving. Okabe stares at the blood dripping from the blade. Only moments ago, the girl had been crying for help. Unable to understand what he has just witnessed, he wonders how this could possibly be considered normal. Holding back his shock, he quietly asks what that demon had even done. Shamal shrugs, saying nobody knows. Mint coldly adds that simply existing is enough. Those words leave Okabe speechless. He cannot help wondering if there truly was no other choice besides killing them. Liana gently pulls him away, telling him it is time to leave. Even as they walk away, Okabe cannot take his eyes off the lifeless girl lying on the ground. Sometime later, the group enters a dungeon and advances through a long stone corridor. Craze remarks that they have already made good progress. Without warning, a massive red monster leaps toward. Okabe instantly raises a barrier, and the creature crashes into it before being knocked back. Watching the effortless defense, Mint jokingly complains that she is never even getting a turn to fight. Craze proudly praises his own judgment for inviting Okabe. Shamal quickly agrees, claiming he knew it would work from the start. Liana silently continues walking ahead while Mint laughs at Shamal's usual confidence. As they move deeper into the dungeon, Okabe catches up to Liana and starts asking about the party she lost. Before he can finish, Liana cuts him off by quoting the first rule of adventurers. Love the dead ends, treasure lies beyond. Listening to that, Okabe cannot help thinking it sounds exactly like an RPG. Curious, he asks why she became an adventurer. Liana answers that it is the best way to make a name for herself. Still confused, Okabe asks why becoming famous matters so much. Liana quietly reveals that if she becomes the most famous person in the world, she believes someone will eventually find her. When Okabe asks who she is waiting for, memories of her mother flash through her mind. She softly answers, her mother. Realizing he may have asked something too personal, Okabe regrets prying. Noticing his expression, Liana asks if he is going to laugh at her. Okabe sincerely asks what there is to laugh about. Caught off guard, Liana hurriedly denies it and walks ahead. A little later, Craze quietly approaches Okabe and asks about his relationship with Liana. Wondering why they are suddenly gossiping, Okabe explains that they only just met, although she did save his life. Craze smiles and says he is glad he made it in time. Confused, Okabe asks what he means. Without warning, Craze presses a hidden switch. The ground beneath Liana suddenly collapses into a deep pit. Before anyone can react, she falls into the darkness below. Okabe cries out her name in shock. Watching everything unfold, Craze smiles with satisfaction. Okabe immediately turns toward him and demands to know why he did it. Still smiling, Craze calmly claims he almost lost Okabe as well and says he is simply glad he was able to save him. Okabe is caught off guard by Craze's sudden change in attitude. With a grin, Craze says he is simply glad he arrived in time to save Liana. Confused and angry, Okabe questions what he means. He asks whether Craze was truly in love with Liana or if everything he said before was just an act. Craze laughs, then his expression changes completely. Biting into his hand until blood begins to drip, he reveals his true nature. According to him, they were never lovers. Liana and her party had only ever been obstacles. Craze explains that his party, Wise Cat's Paw, and Liana's party, Clever Hand's Ass, began their adventures at the same time as rookie adventurers. No matter how hard his group worked, Liana's party was always one step ahead. Whenever people talked about promising adventurers, they only mentioned Liana and her teammates. He believed his own party remained unnoticed because of them. Everything changed after his party obtained a magic tool that sealed a monster inside. The creature was far beyond what rookie adventurers could defeat. Even an A-rank party would struggle against it. Instead of destroying the magic tool, Craze saw it as an opportunity. He deliberately used it to lure Liana's party into a trap. Hearing the truth, Palmyra is horrified by what he has done. Craze continues without remorse. Despite everything, Liana survived. Since then, he has simply been waiting for another chance to kill her. He even thanks Okabe, explaining that because of him, he was able to come along this time. Staring directly at Okabe, Craze declares that this makes him an accomplice as well. Confident that Okabe understands the situation, he tells him he already knows what he should do. Palmyra anxiously calls out to her master. Okabe quietly replies that Craze is right. The scene then shifts. Elsewhere, Liana crashes onto the ground. Looking up, she freezes. Standing before her is the same monster responsible for destroying her former party. Its identity is revealed. An A-rank monster, the giant ogre, also known as the Ogre Fiend. Horrified, Liana realizes she has no chance of defeating it alone. She begins wondering if this is the punishment she deserves. As fear overwhelms her, memories from the past return. She remembers speaking with her mother as a child. Her mother had warned her never to use that power where other people could see it. If she did, they would no longer be able to live peacefully. Liana had obediently agreed, but her mother added one final promise. If the day ever came when she needed that power to protect someone precious, she should never hesitate to use it. The memories continue. Liana recalls the final moments with her former party as they faced the Ogre Fiend. One teammate quietly admitted that this might be the end for him and confessed that he had planned to get married after completing the quest. A female teammate jokingly replied that it was the first time she had heard about that. Another companion warned him not to raise death flags, then declared that they had no choice but to survive and make it back alive. In her memories, Liana steps forward and declares that she will handle the monster herself. Her teammates call out to her in confusion. Knowing what using her hidden power would mean, Liana hesitates for a moment. Then she unleashes it. Her teammates watch in shock and instinctively tell everyone to stay back. Liana desperately begs them to get away from her. She pours all of her strength into attacking the monster, but the effort only sends her crashing into the ground. Unable to understand why everything turned out that way, she breaks down in tears. The memory fades. Liana returns to the present and finds herself facing the same ogre fiend that destroyed her former party. Overwhelmed by guilt, she convinces herself that someone as cursed as her could never be accepted. Believing she deserves to die there, she quietly apologizes to her mother. Just then, the ogre slams its fist toward her. Before the attack can reach her, Okabe and Palmyra arrive. Okabe instantly raises a barrier and blocks the blow, protecting Liana. Stunned, Liana looks at him and asks why he came back. Okabe simply answers that they are comrades. Unable to understand, Liana points out that they have only just met. Okabe smiles and tells her she is nothing more than a clumsy softie. Although she acts cold and distant, she always ends up helping people in trouble. He even repeats the same lesson she once gave him about not trusting others so easily. In the end, she could never abandon someone who needed help. Those words bring back the memory of their first meeting, when Liana insisted she was only helping on a whim. Trying to deny it once again, she argues that he knows nothing about her. What if everything has been an act? What if she is actually a demon disguised as a human? Okabe answers without hesitation. If that were true, then she would be a terrible actress. He knows the real reason she tried to push him away was to keep him out of danger. To him, whether she is human or demon does not matter. The only thing that matters is whether he chooses to believe in her. And he does. While holding back the ogre with his barriers, Okabe desperately wonders how they are supposed to defeat a monster like this. Liana looks at him. For the first time, she believes they might actually have a chance. Then another memory surfaces. She remembers her former teammates warning everyone to stay back after seeing her true form. Fear rises inside her. What if she is betrayed again? But before those doubts can take over, Okabe's words echo through her mind. What matters is whether I choose to believe in you. Strengthened by those words, Liana makes her decision. She tells Okabe that she will reveal her true power. Only to him. Slowly she removes her cape. At the same time, her mother's final advice returns to her. If the day ever came when she needed that power to protect someone precious, she should never hesitate to use it. Accepting those words at last, Liana activates her hidden ability. Spiritual Gear, release. Brilliant golden light erupts around her as she unveils her true power. Watching from nearby, Palmyra stares in amazement while Liana prepares to face the ogre fiend with everything she has. The battle continues as Liana unleashes her hidden power. Golden light engulfs her body as she activates spiritual gear, release. As the light fades, her true form is revealed. Pointed elf-like ears emerge, giving her an appearance often associated with demons. Okabe stares at her in surprise. For a brief moment, he wonders if she is a demon. Then another thought replaces it. She is beautiful. Liana anxiously waits for his reaction. Growing impatient, she asks him to say something. Okabe quickly pushes aside his thoughts and awkwardly replies that she simply looks strong. Liana immediately rushes forward. Thinking she is charging at him, Okabe instinctively tells her to calm down. Clearly dissatisfied, Liana asks if that is really all he has to say. Without slowing down, she charges past him and slams the ogre fiend into the ground with tremendous force. After landing, she turns back and questions his reaction. Not wanting to offend her, Okabe hurriedly insists that he was trying to compliment her. Liana looks away with a small huff and says she will pretend that is what he meant. Her thoughts drift back to the day her former teammates saw her true form. She remembers them recoiling in fear and telling her not to come any closer. But this time is different. Okabe's words echo in her mind. All that matters is that he chooses to believe in her. A relieved smile appears on her face. She is glad she decided to trust him. The two then turn back toward the battlefield. Despite Liana's powerful strike, the ogre fiend slowly stands back up, still grinning. Liana realizes they cannot win until they break through its outer shell. Okabe agrees that attacking it head-on will not be enough. Liana decides there is only one option left. Magic. Okabe is surprised she can still use it. Liana explains that she can while in this form. She gathers her power and unleashes a massive green beam at the ogre. The attack explodes against its body, but the monster barely reacts. The effort drains her, and she drops to one knee. Okabe quickly asks if she is alright. Liana admits she cannot keep firing attacks like that. Even so, Okabe realizes they finally have a chance. He tells Liana to leave the opening to him. Once he creates it, she must strike with everything she has. Liana catches her breath before answering. She needs 5 minutes to fully charge her power. Pamura is shocked. 5 minutes against a monster like this sounds impossible. But Okabe calmly activates his barriers and replies that 5 minutes is more than enough. Looking at him, Liana places her trust in him completely. The ogre fiend suddenly throws a massive punch. The blow crashes into Okabe's barrier. Standing firmly in front of Liana, Okabe shouts at the monster. Its opponent is him, not her. The ogre fiend quickly changes its strategy. Instead of attacking directly, it hurls massive rocks at Okabe's barrier. The projectiles crash against the shield without leaving a mark. Realizing brute force is ineffective, the monster switches tactics. It grabs a massive blade-like weapon and slashes at the barrier. This time the attack cuts through. The impact reaches Okabe, sending pain through his shoulder. He drops to one knee, clutching the wound as Pamura cries out in panic. Okabe immediately realizes the situation has changed. The monster has figured out how to bypass his ricochet. At the same time, he has already consumed too much of his own power. He has not even bought Liana 3 minutes. At this rate, he knows he will not be able to stop the next attack. Desperately searching for a solution, he forces himself to think. There has to be a way to pin the monster down. The ogre tears through the weakened barrier with its claws before driving its horns into it, finally shattering the shield completely. In that instant, Okabe makes his decision. He pours everything he has left into one final barrier. Large blue spikes erupt from the ground and pierce into the ogre, knocking it off balance and pinning it in place. At the same moment, Liana finishes charging her power. She steps forward. Okabe gives the signal. Liana releases everything she has. As her golden fist surges toward the ogre, memories of her past regrets and her former teammates flash through her mind. The brilliant golden light engulfs the monster and sends it crashing backward. Watching the attack, Okabe notices that Liana is bleeding heavily. If this continues, she will collapse. The explosion fills the dungeon with smoke. For a moment, nobody can see the outcome. Okabe anxiously searches through the haze. Then the smoke clears. The ogre lies motionless on the ground, defeated. Pamura jumps with excitement, praising both of them for defeating the monster. With the battle finally over, Liana's strength gives out. She begins to fall. Okabe rushes forward and catches her before she hits the ground. Holding her up, he immediately asks whether her injured shoulder is alright. Before she can answer, a loud rumble echoes through the dungeon. The entire structure begins collapsing. Liana apologizes, believing everything is her fault. Okabe quickly reassures her. They only won because of her. Without wasting another second, he carries Liana onto his back and tells everyone to move. Together with Pamura, they sprint toward the exit as enormous boulders crash down around them. They narrowly avoid being crushed several times. Terrified, Pamura panics and cries that she is about to die from shock, wondering why they are still talking at a time like this. Exhausted, Liana quietly joked that she still wanted to eat many more delicious meals. Even so, she admits she is glad she got to go on an adventure with Minato. Okabe looks back at her in surprise. He reminds her that she is supposed to become a world-class adventurer. Hearing those words, Liana falls silent. More rocks begin collapsing from the ceiling. Pamura and Liana both call out to Okabe as the escape becomes even more dangerous. While running, Okabe remembers the day his classmates abandoned him simply because they believed he had no skill. That memory strengthens his resolve. Being cast out taught him one thing: he will never abandon his comrades. As his determination hardens, enormous stones continue crashing down, threatening to bury the entire dungeon. The scene shifts to Craze and his teammates after their defeat. All three are badly injured. One side of Craze's face is swollen, while Mint and Shamal struggle to even stand. Consumed by anger, Craze slams his fist against a wall and vows that he will never forgive them. The story briefly flashes back to his confrontation with Okabe. After exposing his betrayal of Liana, Craze had thanked Okabe for bringing him there and claimed that this made him an accomplice, insisting he should know what to do. Pamura anxiously looked to Okabe. Instead of agreeing, Okabe called Craze an idiot and told him not to get carried away. Without another word, he attacked. His punch sent Craze flying, while the force of his barriers also struck Mint and Shamal. Remembering that humiliation, Craze bitterly mutters that those scumbags should have stayed trapped inside the dungeon forever. The scene returns to the present. After defeating them, Okabe escaped with Pamura. The story then shifts to the dungeon's exit. A glowing magic circle appears in the sky, and Okabe, Liana, and Pamura fall through it before crashing onto the ground. Okabe lands first. Liana falls directly on top of him, crushing his face against her chest, while Pamura ends up dangling from a tree branch nearby. Embarrassed, Liana immediately calls him a pervert and punches him in the face. Still hanging from the branch, Pamura slowly realizes they actually escaped and asks whether everyone is alright. Rubbing his injured face, Okabe dryly replies that he was, until just now. Liana glares at him and tells him he is completely out of his mind. She explains that they survived only because they found a teleportation magic tool. The story briefly flashes back to the collapsing dungeon where Okabe carried Liana on his back, spotted a glowing necklace, grabbed it, and activated the teleportation tool just before the dungeon collapsed. Returning to the present, Liana insists that what he did was pure suicide. Okabe pulls Pamura down from the branch and admits that he is starving. Liana sighs before deciding she has no choice. She offers to take them to her favorite restaurant. Pamura immediately cheers. As they walk through town, Liana happily recommends the place, saying the steak there is unforgettable. Even the name excites Pamura. Before they can reach it, Liana notices a child staring at her while tightly holding a stone. The child hesitantly says that Craze told everyone she is a demon. Looking around, they realize many townspeople are glaring at Liana, some already holding stones as if preparing to attack. The group quickly retreats but accidentally runs into Craze and his companion. Craze sits confidently in front of the crowd and mocks Liana for showing her face. Startled, Liana stops. Craze loudly announces that they all witnessed her true form. According to him, she is a demon who attacked them to keep her identity secret. He also accuses Okabe of helping her. His words immediately spread through the crowd. People begin whispering that she truly is the party killer everyone talked about and that she is a demon as well. Okabe quickly realizes how dangerous the situation has become. If they handle this poorly, everyone in town could turn against them. After everything they endured in the dungeon, they are in no condition to fight an entire crowd. His thoughts drift back to the day his classmates expelled him. He still has unfinished business with them. If he falls here, he will never get the chance to confront them. Craze points directly at Liana and confidently declares that no one would ever believe a demon who got her own party killed. To him, this is where her story ends. Okabe immediately tries to object. As he looks at the crowd turning against Liana without knowing the truth, he remembers the people who judged him the same way. Quietly, he realizes that blindly following the crowd makes them no different from those who once condemned him. Okabe steps forward and declares that, demon or not, Liana is his comrade. As he speaks, the memory of his classmates driving him away echoes in his mind. Instead of backing down, he makes up his mind. He wants to prove that they were the ones who were wrong. Even if it means standing against everyone in the room or the entire world, he refuses to betray his comrades. His words remind Liana of a conversation they shared earlier, when she dreamed of becoming famous enough for someone important to find her. Okabe continues, whether someone is human or demon does not matter to him. What matters is whether he chooses to believe in them. At that moment, a tall, muscular adventurer steps forward. He calls out to Okabe and says he likes his attitude. Quoting the second rule of an adventurer's creed, he explains that comrades should never be betrayed because trust is more valuable than any treasure. Looking at Craze, he points out the obvious difference between the one who stayed behind to protect his party and the people who abandoned theirs and ran away. To him, it is clear who acted like a true adventurer. Craze is left speechless. Unable to accept it, he asks if the man is seriously taking the side of a demon. The adventurer calmly asks a simple question. If they were really demons, why did Craze not kill them on the spot? Craze desperately blames Okabe for getting in the way. The man immediately points out another contradiction. Despite outnumbering them, Craze still lost. And according to his own story, those so-called demons even allowed them to escape. That hardly sounds like the actions of monsters. Craze grits his teeth. Okabe then reveals the truth. The person who nearly died was Liana. The monster that attacked them came from the same magic tool Craze used. It was also responsible for wiping out Liana's former party. Hearing that, a young woman in the crowd suddenly remembers that Craze had been exploring that same dungeon on the day Liana's party disappeared. Craze nervously insists it was only a coincidence and demands proof. Okabe reaches into his belongings and produces the demon sealing box. Craze immediately recognizes it. The same young woman explains that the magic tool uses the owner's blood as a catalyst. An appraisal would reveal exactly who activated it. Panicking, Craze suddenly attacks her, throwing a mirror that knocks her to the ground. As she cries out in pain, the crowd's attitude immediately changes. People begin glaring at Craze instead. Desperate, he begs them to stop looking at him that way. Then he turns his anger toward Okabe. Drawing his sword, he blames him for everything before charging forward. Okabe calmly raises his barrier. The moment Craze's sword strikes it, the blade shatters. Looking at him, Okabe quietly tells him that it is over. Before Craze can react, Liana rushes in from behind and kicks him across the face, sending him crashing to the ground. The young woman who exposed the demon sealing box steps forward once again. Revealing herself as an official of the Adventurers Guild, she announces that, under guild law, the members of Wise Cat's Paw have their adventurer licenses permanently revoked and are expelled from the guild. Bleeding on the ground, Craze desperately protests, saying they cannot erase everything his party built over the years. Ignoring him, the guard sees Craze and his companion. The guild official adds that Kingdom will decide the rest of their punishment, but they will never see freedom again. With everything settled, Okabe, Liana, and Pamura quietly leave the town. Liana notices and asks if he is already leaving. Okabe explains that his real enemies are his classmates and every so-called hero summoned to this world. After everything involving Tezuka, Craze, and the recent battle, rumors are certain to spread. If all of them come after him at once, he will be at a serious disadvantage. Liana smiles and says disappearing sounds like the best option. She also admits that she would not mind traveling with him. Okabe reminds her that doing so could make all of humanity her enemy. Liana simply smiles and tells him to say what he really means. Even if the whole world turns against them, they are still comrades. Having made his decision, Okabe says he wants to head into demon territory. But to do that, he needs Liana's help. Embarrassed, Liana blushes before pretending she has no choice but to accept. Pamura immediately announces that she will be joining them too. Okabe reaches out his hand. Liana accepts it. He thanks her and says he is looking forward to officially traveling together from now on. The three begin walking toward their new destination. Then, someone calls out to Okabe. A young woman wearing a purple cape approaches. Okabe immediately recognizes her. It is Shinomiya. Looking directly at him, she asks a single question. Is Okabe now an enemy of demons, or an enemy of humanity?
Just as they are about to leave, they encounter Okabe's classmate, Shinomiya, accompanied by several soldiers. The soldiers praise Shinomiya for tracking Okabe down so quickly, and mention that Lord Toll will be impressed. Hearing this, Okabe immediately realizes that Shinomiya has come after him. He confronts her, and Shinomiya calmly confirms it while opening her book. She mentions the tale of the loyal retainers, calling it a beautiful story. Okabe coldly asks what she is getting at. The book begins glowing with purple light as the soldiers prepare for battle. Liana immediately takes a fighting stance, realizing that they may have become enemies. Okabe accepts that they are about to fight. Shinomiya raises her book and prepares to cast a spell, but instead of attacking Okabe, she suddenly turns around and strikes the soldiers behind her. A burst of golden and purple light blinds the soldiers and knocks them unconscious. Okabe and Liana stare in surprise. Shinomiya then approaches Okabe and quietly reveals that she knows he is planning a raid on Kira's mansion. She asks to accompany him. She explains that the tale of the loyal retainers tells of the Akko Ronin storming Lord Kira's estate to avenge their fallen lord, making it a story about correcting injustice through vengeance. Okabe is left confused by her strange metaphor. He points out that the soldiers she just attacked are Toll's subordinates. Shinomiya dismisses the concern, explaining that they simply followed her on their own. She then reveals that deceiving one's enemies begins by deceiving one's allies. Okabe remains suspicious, wondering whether Shinomiya used Toll's own men simply to gain his trust, or whether even that explanation is another bluff. Shinomiya suddenly blushes and admits that she has always wanted to use that line. Liana steps between them and openly calls Shinomiya suspicious, questioning which side she is actually trying to fool. Shinomiya responds that judging people by their appearance alone is unwise, whether they are human or demon. Liana immediately becomes suspicious that Shinomiya has discovered her true identity. She wonders how Shinomiya could have seen through her when ordinary appraisal magic tools should not be capable of doing so. Shinomiya raises her book again and activates her skill, Nose Notes, the Book of Wisdom. She explains that the book records what she observes and reproduces phenomena she understands. In simple terms, it allows her to learn at an accelerated rate. Golden letters appear around Shinomiya as she recalls seeing appraisal magic and Kira wielding his golden sword. She explains that being able to observe appraisal magic early on was fortunate, allowing her to understand it. However, she admits that unique abilities such as skills are still difficult for her to fully analyze. Okabe remains cautious, wondering why she is volunteering so much information. He refuses to accept everything she says without question. Liana agrees, calling Shinomiya extremely suspicious, then asks how a human like her can use magic in the first place. Shinomiya explains that humans and demons are fundamentally different. Unlike other worlders who lack natural mana flow, humans in this world are surrounded by mana. As long as someone can access that mana and knows the proper spell formula, they can reproduce magic. Liana realizes that Shinomiya's skill must allow her to perceive mana directly, which would explain how she can cast magic through her understanding of spell formulas. However, Liana points out that Shinomiya already knows Minato. Okabe cuts her off and explains that Shinomiya is one of the heroes, the same people who abandoned him. Memories of his classmates treating him as worthless return to him, including Shinomiya standing by without doing anything to stop them. Shinomiya lowers her head and apologizes. She admits that back then, she could not do anything because she honestly did not know what she was supposed to do. Okabe remained skeptical, reminding himself that anyone can say the right things after everything has already happened. Still, he remembers the day Kira was about to kill him and Shinomiya stepped in, warning Kira that killing him would make him a murderer. She was the one who stopped Kira that day, but Okabe still wonders whether she truly saved him or was simply protecting Kira from becoming a murderer. Back in the present, Shinomiya asks what she can do to earn their trust. Liana immediately demands that she hand over all her equipment. Shinomiya realizes Liana would never accept her terms if she had actually seen how capable she was. She begins removing her robe and even starts to remove her other clothing, leaving both Liana and Okabe stunned. Okabe quickly turns away and keeps Pomera from looking as well. Liana stops Shinomiya and makes it clear that she only wanted her weapons, not for her to go that far. Shinomiya calmly puts her robe back on. Liana points out that despite Shinomiya's proper appearance, she is anything but harmless, then accuses Okabe of staring at her. Okabe awkwardly denies it. As Shinomiya dresses again, Liana remains suspicious of how far she was willing to go, just to prove she had nothing to hide. Okabe then remembers how, back in class, everyone avoided him except Shinomiya. She was the strange one who still approached him and encouraged him to keep moving forward. Those memories make him question whether he can really distrust her completely. Shinomiya notices Pomera and asks if she can hold him. Pomera initially hides behind Okabe's leg, but Shinomiya picks him up and gently pets him. Pomera quickly decides that she must be a good person. Liana remarks that Pomera is far too easy to please, while Okabe wonders if being as carefree as Pomera might not be so bad. After putting Pomera down, Shinomiya confirms that Okabe is heading toward demon territory. She then warns the group that once they move beyond this point, returning to their class will no longer be an option. Okabe suggests that Shinomiya would probably be safer staying with the others, but she explains that she wants to discover the truth of this world and see how everything ultimately ends. She knows she will never find those answers if she remains with her classmates. Okabe finally agrees to let her join them. Although he still cannot completely trust Shinomiya, he knows that if he is going to face Kira and the others, every bit of strength will matter. He also knows Shinomiya is someone he would rather have as an ally than an enemy. Liana accepts Okabe's decision but warns Shinomiya that she will be watching her closely. Pomera is delighted to have another companion. Shinomiya thanks them and takes responsibility for navigation, having already recorded the map. She suggests that they first head toward the nearest campsite. As the group starts moving, a golden projectile suddenly flies toward Okabe. He dodges it, while Palmera jumps away in fright. A man in a green hooded tunic curses after missing his target. He and another man in a black hood step forward, while two girls remain near a large rock behind them. The girl in red immediately orders Okabe to stay away from Shinomiya, and the green-clad man checks whether she is unharmed. Shinomiya lowers her head with a cold sweat, recognizing them as the friends she expected to show up. She remembers stopping Kira from killing Okabe and wonders whether she should have allowed it to happen. Her friends reassure her that none of the current situation is her fault, claiming that she only went after Okabe because she was worried about him. Okabe catches the implication and asks Shinomiya if those were really her thoughts. Her companions insist that she had no other reason to seek him out, and mock the idea that she might have wanted to see him. They urge Shinomiya to return with them because everyone is supposedly worried about her. After a moment of hesitation, Shinomiya quietly agrees. Seeing her standing beside them, Okabe is reminded of the same behavior that led to his own abandonment. He realizes that people often stop thinking for themselves and simply follow whoever speaks the loudest. He calls out to Shinomiya and asks whether she is going to make the same choice she made back then. Shinomiya lowers her head, struggling to answer. Before she can finish, Hanjo steps in, telling her that she does not have to answer and that he will handle the situation himself. Hanjo turns toward Okabe and makes it clear that he believes Kira should have killed him. He then warns Okabe to stay away from Shinomiya, whom he obsessively considers his own. Using his exclusive possession, he traps Shinomiya inside a green structure. Shinomiya is stunned, while Nozomi points out how extreme Hanjo's crush on her is. Reito is equally amused by Hanjo openly declaring his feelings. Hanjo urges Shinomiya to return home with them, but she refuses, making it clear that she has no intention of going back. Okabe demands to know what Hanjo has done to her. Nozomi accuses him of threatening Shinomiya, while Haruki mocks Okabe's appearance and calls him the worst. Palmera is horrified and wonders what Okabe has done to cause all this, while Liana is more concerned with Hanjo treating Shinomiya like an object. She attacks the green structure, but her punch has no effect. Hanjo proudly explains that the fortress was created specifically for Shinomiya and is completely inviolable. Liana then changes tactics and goes after Hanjo himself, but Nozomi suddenly intervenes and pulls him out of the way. Liana is stunned that an otherworlder can keep up with her physical movements. From inside the fortress, Shinomiya realizes that Nozomi is using a skill capable of stopping time. She identifies her as the mysterious girl who stops time and determines that the effect only lasts for a few seconds. Liana attempts another attack, but her body suddenly becomes extremely heavy. Reito's skill, inferiority diffusion, is responsible, leaving her struggling to move. Hanjo then fires an arrow at the weakened Liana, but Okabe protects her with his barrier, causing the attack to fall harmlessly. Standing in front of Liana, Okabe finally confronts the group. He tells them that he stayed silent until now, but asks whether they had actually listened to Shinomiya's own decision. Hanjo stares at him in shock. From inside the fortress, Shinomiya watches Okabe and remembers that this is exactly what he was like back in school. She recalls how her classmates often excluded her because of the difference in their social standing. One day, Haruki and Nozomi casually planned to go to karaoke after school. Hanjo considered inviting Shinomiya, but the others dismissed the idea, believing that someone as wealthy and academically gifted as her lived in a completely different world from them. Shinomiya had overheard their conversation while sitting alone and reading at her desk. Although she never said anything, she admits to herself that there were times when she wanted to sing with them too. Shinomiya remembers another moment in the library. She takes a book from the shelf and notices Okabe's name on the borrowing record, showing that he had checked it out before her. She realizes that Okabe was always taking the books she wanted to read first, and that this small coincidence was what initially caught her attention. One day, she finds him searching through the shelves with several books already in his arms and approaches him, realizing that he is the reason she keeps missing them. Okabe is surprised to learn that Shinomiya was interested in the same book, but instead of making a big deal out of it, he simply tells her that she is free to read whatever she wants. His casual response leaves her stunned because, unlike everyone else, he does not project assumptions onto her. From then on, Shinomiya starts approaching Okabe whenever she sees him in the library. She regularly recommends books to him, handing him different titles she thinks he might enjoy. One day, Okabe asks why she likes books so much. Shinomiya explains that the world inside books feels free, no matter how suffocating reality becomes. Everyone is equal within a story, and reading allows her to lose herself and forget about reality. She admits that she hopes to someday write stories herself and share them with someone, but becomes embarrassed after saying so much. Okabe reassures her that there is nothing to be embarrassed about and says he would like to read one of her stories someday. Shinomiya realizes that whenever she talks to Okabe, she can finally be herself. Later, she secretly writes a novel and considers letting Okabe read it. She leaves the manuscript in her desk before stepping away, but some pages fall out. When she returns, she finds Hanjo and his friends reading the pages and mocking the idea of a self-written novel. Shinomiya tries to explain, but they dismiss her concerns and instead accuse Okabe of writing it. They bring the pages to Okabe and ridicule him, claiming that someone who spends all his time reading must have written something so embarrassing about Shinomiya. Okabe says nothing and allows them to believe the accusation. Shinomiya watches in disbelief, wondering why he refuses to defend himself. After class, Okabe returns the pages to her. When Shinomiya asks why he protected her, he reminds her of what she once said about the freedom found in books. He explains that worrying about how others see her would only prevent her from being truly free. His words make Shinomiya realize that she had been allowing the opinions of others to control her. Back in the present, Okabe urges Shinomiya to break through that barrier herself and tell her own story. Shinomiya finally gathers her courage. She admits that the self-written novel from back then was hers and explains that it is one of the reasons she came to Okabe. She raises her book as its pages begin to flutter, and her power spreads through the green structure trapping her. Cracks begin forming across the barrier. With everyone watching in shock, Shinomiya finally reveals that she came because she loves Okabe. The green structure breaks apart completely, leaving Hanjo and the others stunned as Shinomiya stands free. The battle resumes as Shinomiya breaks free from Hanjo's green barrier, finally making it clear that she loves Okabe. Her confession leaves Okabe, Liana, and Pomera stunned, while Hanjo can barely believe what he has heard. Shinomiya lands safely as the broken pieces of the barrier float around her. Okabe realizes that the fortress was designed to withstand attacks from outside, but it was never meant to defend against attacks from within. Liana dryly points out that this is exactly what happens when someone becomes too self-absorbed. Shinomiya raises her book of wisdom, surrounding herself and the book with purple flames. She explains that if Hanjo still doesn't understand what she meant by love, she will make her intentions clear. A massive green sphere forms around Shinomiya as she begins reciting the spell. The surrounding flames twist into several spirals before she unleashes her attack, piercing Sky Arrow. The spiraling magic crashes into Hanjo and his group, sending them flying. Liana is impressed that Shinomiya can use intermediate-level wind magic. Haruki appears to be knocked down face first, but Liana soon realizes that the person on the ground is only a clone. The real Haruki is standing nearby, calmly fixing her makeup. Shinomiya identifies the technique as either a decoy or a clone, and Okabe recognizes it as Kuramochi's skill. Haruki confirms it before revealing her ability, Instant Beauty, which creates numerous copies of herself. Pomera struggles to determine which one is real, but Okabe and Shinomiya immediately identify the original. Liana also spots her and charges straight toward her, leaving the other copies behind. The three of them are equally stunned by how over-the-top Haruki's ability is. Haruki is shocked that Liana can identify her so easily. Before Liana can reach her, however, Nozomi, Reito, and several of Haruki's copies attack together. Liana is caught between them as dark purple and pink light restrains her. Seeing that Liana is at a disadvantage, Shinomiya decides to handle the fight herself. She prepares her book of wisdom and makes it clear that this is her battle. Hanjo, refusing to accept Shinomiya's decision, questions what she could possibly see in someone like Okabe. He raises his bow and fires a flaming arrow at Okabe and Shinomiya, but Okabe quickly creates his protective screen. The arrow strikes the barrier and is reflected away. Okabe tells Hanjo that he is the one who needs to wake up. Realizing he cannot break through Okabe's defense, Hanjo traps Haruki inside another green fortress and uses her as a shield. Even Haruki is irritated that he is treating her as a human shield simply because his barrier is so difficult to break. Okabe studies the situation, recognizing how troublesome Hanjo's ability is and wondering how he can bring it down. Meanwhile, Hanjo believes that dragging the fight into a battle of attrition will favor his larger group. He intends to trap Shinomiya again and gradually keep her under his control. A golden ring suddenly appears beneath Hanjo and his group, startling them. Shinomiya assures them that she has no intention of killing them. Instead, she activates her Book of Wisdom and traps them inside a prison, making them experience what it feels like to be confined and powerless. Their cries echo through the tall building. That night, Okabe's group sets up 2 tents. Okabe and Pomera share one, with Pomera already asleep and dreaming about food. While wondering whether they are close to the demon realm, Okabe hears someone entering the tent and immediately wakes up. It is Shinomiya, who approaches him in a surprisingly seductive manner and asks if she can sleep beside him. Embarrassed, Okabe immediately refuses. Shinomiya explains that she was only imitating something she had read in books about what boys supposedly liked. Okabe points out how biased that knowledge is. Rather than returning to sleep, Okabe leaves the tent and sits beside the campfire. Shinomiya follows him, and he realizes she came because she wanted to talk. Shinomiya asks about his barrier ability, recalling how it had protected Liana. Okabe explains that it was originally considered an incompetent skill. Shinomiya reveals that she believes the appraisal tool labeled him incompetent because his barrier prevented it from properly analyzing him. She had noticed something was wrong but could not say anything at the time. Okabe then asks about her own ability, the Book of Wisdom, wondering whether her love of reading is what gave her the skill. Shinomiya admits that this is likely, explaining that she developed the ability because she desperately wanted to understand things. She then confesses that she has always struggled to understand people's feelings. Shinomiya recalls her childhood when she honestly suggested that another girl would be better suited for a princess role in a school play. The girl began crying because she wanted the role for a different reason, and Shinomiya could not understand why her honesty had hurt her. Her friends criticized her for being unable to read the room, leaving her confused and guilty. Back in the present, Shinomiya explains that she has spent years studying psychology, philosophy, and countless novels, hoping that understanding everything would prevent her from making mistakes. Yet she still cannot fully understand people's emotions. She admits that when Okabe was cast out by their classmates, she simply watched without knowing what she should do. Even now, she does not know what Okabe truly thinks of her, despite everything she has studied. Okabe tells her that people themselves do not always understand what they feel, so expecting someone else to completely understand them is impossible. He admits that he does not know exactly what Shinomiya is thinking either, but he can see that she is trying harder than anyone to understand others. For him, that effort is enough. Shinomiya asks if she is really allowed to remain that way. Okabe tells her that he admires people who keep trying to understand, even when they know they cannot understand everything, rather than those who assume they already know everything. Under the night sky, Shinomiya quietly thanks him, finally finding some reassurance in his words. The next morning, Okabe wakes up and notices that Pomera is missing. After getting dressed, he joins Liana and Shinomiya outside, where they are already packing up the tents. Liana cheerfully greets him, while Shinomiya remarks that the previous night was a good one. Liana immediately misinterprets the comment and becomes suspicious, forcing Okabe to awkwardly clarify that nothing happened. Okabe then asks whether either of them has seen Pomera. Neither has. He assumes she must have gotten up earlier, but they soon notice several traces on the ground: a half-eaten apple, a banana peel, and another partially eaten apple. With Pomera nowhere in sight, Okabe, Liana, and Shinomiya are left wondering what happened to her. Shinomiya struggles to believe Pomera could have simply wandered off, comparing the trail to Hansel and Gretel and hoping there is no witch waiting at the end. Okabe tells her not to jinx them. Following the trail of half-eaten fruit, Okabe becomes increasingly convinced that it is a trap, but he continues forward while hoping Pomera is safe. The trail eventually leads them into a gloomy forest covered in dark mist. After making their way through it, they suddenly emerge into a valley filled with countless glowing blue flowers. While Okabe remains cautious, Liana and Shinomiya are mesmerized by the sight and lean closer to the flowers. Shinomiya soon notices that the flowers are reacting to magic. A white-haired elf girl suddenly approaches them, immediately putting Shinomiya on alert as she recognizes her as a demon. Examining the flowers, Shinomiya notices that they are growing despite the surrounding dead trees and are infused with magic. She asks the elf if she created the flower garden. The elf is surprised that Shinomiya figured it out and explains that she is researching magic that could make flowers immortal. She has succeeded in preventing them from withering, but the petals still eventually fall. She hopes that one day everyone will be able to appreciate flowers. Shinomiya realizes that the flowers neither wither nor remain completely intact, perhaps revealing the difficulty of achieving true immortality. Okabe then asks why the elf is not wary of them. She calmly explains that loving flowers does not make someone incapable of being a bad person. The elf introduces herself as Rachel Florschel and asks who they are. Okabe introduces himself and explains that he is human. He also tells her that they are searching for their talking animal companion and asks whether she has seen her. Rachel immediately realizes they must be looking for Pomera. She explains that Pomera was her guest that morning having followed the trail of nuts Richel had left behind. After eating her fill, Palmera fell asleep, so Richel sent her to the village. Liana becomes irritated at Palmera's gluttony, while Okabe apologizes and explains that they are her guardians. He asks Richel to lead them to her. Richel agrees and guides them toward her village. After reaching the village gates, Richel is confronted by an older elf man who questions where she has been and whether she has been continuing her foolish research. When he notices Okabe and the others, his attitude immediately changes. He warns Richel that humans only bring calamity and reminds her that their clan has been entrusted with protecting the village. He criticizes her for wasting her time playing with flowers instead of acting responsibly and tells her she should be more like her sister. Richel tries to defend herself, insisting that even her sister. Before she can finish, Palmera's cries suddenly echo from inside one of the houses. Okabe and Liana immediately recognize her voice. Without waiting, they rush toward the sound as Okabe calls out to Palmera and urges everyone to follow. The elf girl's father tries to stop them, but Okabe and Liana ignore him and rush into the house where they heard Palmera's cries. Inside, they are shocked to find Palmera comfortably sitting at a table, enjoying a feast of fruit. She is completely absorbed in the taste and happily praises how delicious everything is. Relieved to see that she is safe, Okabe approaches her, but two ELF soldiers immediately block the way with their spears. Palmera runs toward Okabe for help, while the soldiers order the humans to stay away from the divine beast. Okabe is confused by their reaction until the elf leader enters and explains that Palmera is actually Lady Palmeratus, the divine beast, whose status has been passed down through generations and revered by their people. Liana is stunned that Palmera could be someone so important, while Shinomiya recognizes that the elves worship her. Okabe then remembers the demon prisoner previously referring to Palmera as a goddess. He realizes that if Palmera stayed in the village, she could live comfortably, be worshipped as a divine beast, and enjoy as much delicious food as she wanted. Believing it might be the happiest life for her, Okabe asks whether she would rather remain there instead of continuing with them. Palmera refuses. She insists that she is simply Palmera and that being a divine beast means nothing to her. Despite the enormous feast before her, she chooses to stay with Okabe because she had already sworn to serve him for the rest of her life. Okabe is touched by her loyalty, but one of the elves again argues that humans bring calamity. Palmera pauses before deciding to prove them wrong herself. She raises her paws and begins releasing a powerful divine energy. Everyone watches in shock as her body transforms into that of a small green-haired girl surrounded by radiant green energy. After landing, Palmera challenges the elves to reconsider their prejudice. She explains that appearances should not determine whether someone is good or evil, and declares Okabe to be the savior who once rescued her life. The elf leader is stunned by her true form. He and the soldiers immediately kneel before Okabe, apologizing for their earlier behavior and realizing that they had mistaken the person who saved their divine beast for a threat. The leader then welcomes Okabe and his companions to stay in the village as honored guests. Later that night, beneath the starry sky, Liana and Palmera sleep inside the house while Shinomiya quietly reads. Richel, the white-haired elf girl, walks outside and heads toward her beloved flower garden. She notices someone behind her and turns around, wondering what they are doing outside so late. Before she can learn who it is, the flower petals suddenly begin to burn. Unable to sleep, Okabe lies awake thinking about everything that happened that day. He is still amazed that Palmera turned out to be a divine beast, and that she willingly gave up the feast she had been enjoying just to remain with them. He begins to feel that cooperating with the demon race might actually work out before finally closing his eyes. A few moments later, Shinomiya urgently wakes him and tells him to get dressed and follow her. Confused by the sudden urgency, Okabe follows her into the night, wondering what could have happened. Several dozen minutes earlier, elsewhere, Doujou, Sugita Mahiro, and Higuchi Hachi are traveling through the dark lands. Doujou boasts about their recent victory, while Sugita praises him. Sugita is known for always carrying a guitar despite not being able to play it, while Hachi constantly complains and is a terrible drummer despite being good at slamming tables. Doujou remains bitter about the female knight who cut off his arm and wants revenge for what happened. While traveling toward the demon territory, they question whether they are heading in the right direction based on Toru's information. Sugita suggests finding a village to raid so they can rest. Before they can go any farther, they encounter Richel. Sugita casually asks what she is doing out so late, while Richel asks whether they know Minato. Doujou immediately recognizes the connection and becomes hostile toward her. Her appearance, especially her long ears, reminds him that she is a demon, and his hatred quickly turns into an intention to kill her. The attack begins with embittered ignition. Higuchi unleashes a powerful fire beam at Richel, treating the attack like entertainment. Richel struggles to defend herself and protect the herbs in her flower garden, but Tsuihou joins the assault and repeatedly kicks her. Despite being attacked, Rochelle continues trying to protect the flowers and herbs. Tsuihou's resentment only grows as he continues beating her, insisting that his grudge cannot be settled so easily. Eventually, Rochelle stops moving. Tsuihou looks down at her with contempt, dismissing her as nothing more than fodder and leaving her to burn among the flames. Minato rushes to Rochelle after finding her badly injured. She reveals that the attackers are his classmates, leaving him shocked. When he asks why she didn't escape, Rochelle explains that she stayed behind to protect the important flower. She then gives him the herbs and her book, believing his gentle power can preserve the flower and asking him to someday give it to her sister. Minato desperately tells her to stop talking, but Rochelle leaves him with her final wish before passing away. Afterward, Minato asks Shinomiya to stay behind and look after Rochelle while he goes alone. Meanwhile, Seraphim leads Pomera toward Rochelle. Back at the hidden settlement, Sugita, Tsuihou, and Higuchi continue attacking the villagers. They mock the elves and even turn the massacre into a competition. A young boy desperately clings to his wounded father as the village falls into chaos. Liana saves the boy from a falling log, but she hesitates to release her spirit armament because she fears destroying the village herself. Before she can do anything else, Sugita uses his paralysis ability on her, leaving her unable to move. Tsuihou then grabs the young boy by the neck and threatens to kill him in front of his injured father. Liana struggles helplessly as Tsuihou prepares to strike. Just before the attack lands, someone suddenly punches Tsuihou in the neck and rescues the boy. Liana immediately recognizes Minato, while his former classmates are stunned by his appearance. Tsuihou mocks him for supposedly turning to the demons after being abandoned by the heroes, but Okabe ignores him and asks Liana to get the villagers to safety. When Liana insists on fighting alongside him, Okabe tells her that this is his fight. He then steps forward and faces Higuchi, Sugita, and Tsuihou, furious over what they have done. For the first time, Okabe openly confronts his former classmates, making it clear that he will never forgive them. Okabe shouted that he would never forgive them, his face filled with anger. For a moment, the three former classmates were silent, but they soon burst into mocking laughter at his declaration. Tsuihou stepped forward, flames surging around him as his confidence swelled. He activated, causing one of his hands to expand into a massive, flame-covered fist. Believing his overwhelming strength was enough to defeat Okabe, he charged straight at him. Before Tsuihou could land the blow, Okabe remotely struck him with a burst of energy and knocked him back. Tsuihou stared in disbelief. Before he could recover, another controlled energy strike slammed into his back, making him stagger in pain. Furious, Tsuihou rushed at Okabe again. This time, Okabe created an obstacle directly in his path. Tsuihou failed to notice it, stumbled over it, and crashed face first into the ground. Higuchi nervously called out to him. Scratching the ground in frustration, Tsuihou began questioning his own ability. His grew stronger according to his confidence. If he had been defeated so easily by Okabe, then perhaps, somewhere in his mind, he had already begun to doubt that he could win. Higuchi noticed his hesitation and tried to provoke him, urging Tsuihou not to let Okabe intimidate him. He then activated. His ability drew power from his anger, with each increase in his rage triggering another magical draw. Against Okabe, Higuchi felt certain his resentment would never run out. The result of his latest draw was maximum firepower, level max. Multiple enormous fireballs appeared around Higuchi as he laughed wildly, preparing to unleash them all at once. Okabe remained calm. As the fireballs were launched toward him, he activated and formed a barrier around Higuchi himself, enclosing him within the shield. Higuchi froze in confusion. The massive flames he had unleashed were now trapped inside the barrier with him. With nowhere to escape, the attack was reflected back upon its caster. The flames engulfed Higuchi, burning him alive. Okabe watched without looking away and coldly remarked that Higuchi was being consumed by his own karma. He then activated full reflection, forcing the attack to continue until Higuchi's body was reduced to a charred skeleton. Once Okabe removed the barrier, the remains collapsed onto the ground. Sugita stared at Higuchi's body in horror, trembling uncontrollably. His fear only worsened when he suddenly realized that Okabe had appeared behind him. Okabe calmly questioned whether Sugita's legs had gone numb. Sugita spun around in panic and began wildly swinging his axe at him. Okabe effortlessly repelled the weapon with his barrier. The redirected axe struck Sugita instead. Sugita staggered, realizing too late that his legs were no longer moving. His own weapon had become the cause of his death, and he collapsed beside Higuchi. Tsuihou could only stare at the bodies of his two friends. They had actually lost to Okabe, the person they had always regarded as an incompetent failure. The realization horrified him. Someone like Okabe, whom he had considered completely useless, had defeated them both, and that thought reminded Tsuihou of Mikage. He had always looked down on people he considered incompetent, yet now he was the one standing helplessly before someone he had once deemed worthless. Dujou glared at Okabe with pure hatred. Unable to accept that he had been defeated by someone he considered a gloomy loner, he strengthened his body once more, transforming one side of himself into a monstrous form. With his overwhelming strength concentrated into a single punch, Dujou charged straight at Okabe. Okabe remained composed and activated. An energy shield appeared directly in front of Dujou's fist. The moment his attack struck it, the shield redirected the force and sent him flying backward. Dujou struggled to regain control in midair, but Okabe immediately followed up with another technique. Multiple bouncing energy shields materialized throughout the air. Dujou was thrown from one shield to another, each impact sending him violently in a different direction before he could even react. He was repeatedly bounced through the air until Okabe sent him crashing toward the ground. Dujou desperately struggled to stop himself, but Okabe created another shield beneath him at the last moment. Dujou slammed into it and became trapped against its surface, his body immobilized by the barrier. As Okabe watched him struggle, memories of Dujou's cruelty toward his classmates and the villagers returned to his mind. His anger rose again as he confronted him for acting as though he had any right to judge others. Dujou could barely move as he choked out Okabe's name. Okabe then activated. Small energy pillars formed around Dujou and pinned him firmly against a massive stone. Okabe slowly approached him and gave him one final chance to understand the pain he had inflicted on others and the consequences of his own actions. But Dujou refused to show any remorse. Instead, he continued insisting that killing demons was simply the natural thing to do because they deserved it. Hearing that, Okabe's expression hardened. He understood that Dujou would never regret what he had done. Okabe summoned a glowing weapon through and stepped toward him. He delivered the final blow, driving the blade straight into Dujou's heart. Dujou's eyes widened in fear as he realized that the other heroes had never been capable of defeating Okabe like this. His body went limp. Okabe pulled the blade from his chest, and Dujou's lifeless body fell to the ground. Okabe slowly walked away. As he moved through the ruined village, he covered his mouth, struggling with the nausea rising inside him. He passed Liana and Pomera without looking at either of them, his expression weighed down by sadness. Pomera softly called after him, but Liana gently stopped her, telling her to give Okabe some time alone. Okabe eventually reached Shinomiya, who was sitting beside Rochelle's lifeless body. He quietly asked whether it was over. When he asked about Rochelle, Shinomiya silently shook her head. Okabe lowered his gaze and accepted the answer. He apologized to Shinomiya and asked her to leave him alone for a while. Shinomiya quietly walked away, still looking troubled by his condition. Once he was alone, Okabe fell to his knees. He stared at his hands, unable to shake the realization that he had killed someone with them. The guilt overwhelmed him. He wondered if he had failed to protect the villagers once again. If he and the others had never come to the village, perhaps none of this would have happened. He buried his face in his hands, unable to find an answer to what he should have done differently. Rochelle's name escaped his lips as he quietly broke down. By morning, Okabe had fallen asleep beneath the protection of his barrier. Liana approached him and gently called his name, asking whether he was still asleep. Okabe slowly opened his eyes and looked up at her, asking what she wanted. Liana told him that everyone was waiting for him. Okabe immediately turned away, still unable to face the villagers after everything that had happened, but Liana refused to let him remain there. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him to his feet, insisting that he come with her. Okabe could only protest weakly as she dragged him along. They walked past the ruined houses and grieving villagers. Okabe kept his gaze lowered, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Because of us humans, this village is... I can't even look them in the eye. Liana continued pulling him forward until they reached a large building. Inside, the warm aroma of food filled the room. Shinomiya stood beside a large pot, preparing the meal. She explained that they had made pork miso soup. Okabe blinked in surprise, trying to understand why they were preparing food at a time like this. Liana quickly explained that the father and child Okabe had saved wanted to thank them, so they had provided the ingredients for the meal. Shinomiya confirmed that they had cooked it together, while Pomera happily claimed that she had helped as well. Liana teased her for mostly serving as the taste tester, making everyone laugh. Okabe looked around at them. Everyone... The warmth of the room suddenly reminded him of the previous night. Flames, screams, the villagers who had died, Higuchi, Sugita, and Dujou falling before him. His hands began to tremble. That's right, so many people died last night, and I killed people too. He wondered whether that made him no different from the people he had fought. Looking down at his shaking hands, Okabe quietly admitted that he didn't feel he had the right to eat the food they had prepared. Liana immediately tried to reassure him, but before she could finish, the young elf boy stepped forward and firmly rejected what Okabe had said. The child nervously approached him and recalled how terrified he had been when Duju held him. At that moment he had been certain he was going to die, but Okabe and his companions had saved him. The child remembered how safe he had felt when Okabe appeared and compared him to a knight. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, he thanked Okabe for saving his life. Okabe could only stare at him in surprise. The child's father then stepped forward and bowed deeply, expressing his gratitude for everything Okabe had done for them the previous night. He explained that the meal was only a small token of their appreciation and asked Okabe to accept it. The child eagerly encouraged him to eat. Liana also reminded Okabe that refusing their kindness would be rude. After hesitating, Okabe finally accepted. He sat down, picked up a spoon, and tasted the warm soup. Palmera immediately watched him with anticipation, waiting for his reaction. Okabe remained completely still for a moment. Then his expression softened, and a large smile appeared on his face. He admitted that it was delicious. The tension that had filled the room began to ease. After they finished eating, Liana looked at Okabe and asked whether he felt a little better. Palmera happily declared that delicious food could solve anything, bringing another small smile to Okabe's face. Okabe agreed, then looked around and noticed that the village head was nowhere nearby. Liana pointed toward the trees where he stood alone in the distance. She explained that he was probably carrying the weight of the village's destruction, as well as the loss of his daughter. Rochelle, in the end, I failed to protect her again, but there is still something I have to do. Okabe decided to go and speak with him. The village head stood beneath the open sky, staring into the distance. He remained silent for a moment before admitting that, from his perspective, humans truly were a calamity. He also blamed Rochelle for devoting herself to a flower garden that had seemed useless to the village. After everything that had happened, he had begun to believe that such dreams were ultimately meaningless, because humans would only destroy them, yet he could no longer maintain that belief. The very humans he had condemned were also the ones who had saved his village. Faced with that contradiction, he no longer knew what was right. He felt that the burden of being the village head had been too much for someone who had only ever wanted to be a simple gardener. He had failed to protect both his daughter and his village, leaving him convinced that he had nothing left to live for. Okabe responded by holding out the flower Rochelle had protected until the very end. He explained that Rochelle had entrusted it to them and had asked them to give it to her sister. Shinomiya then handed the village head Rochelle's research book. Liana recognized it as the research concerning the creation of eternal flowers. Shinomiya explained that she had read part of it, but the section concerning the conversion of emotions was something she could not fully understand. The village head opened the book and discovered Rochelle's message to her sister. She had written that she believed her sister would eventually understand the true meaning of the flower. She had also promised that she would create a flower her sister could love. The village head slowly realized why the flower had never withered. As Okabe looked down at the flower in his hand, it suddenly began to glow. A strange sensation passed through him, and his consciousness was drawn into Rochelle's memories. The village head finally understood what Rochelle had been trying to accomplish. Her research had never been pointless. She had been trying to restore their broken family and create something that could bring them together again. He realized that Rochelle had never truly given up on their family. The village head became overwhelmed with emotion as he finally accepted that Rochelle had not been wrong. If the entire world could bloom like that flower, overflowing with love rather than hatred, perhaps it really could become a beautiful place. Okabe watched the flower quietly. Was I able to protect Rochelle's flower? He then reflected on everything that had happened. In the end, the demons were no different from humans. They could suffer, love, hate, and make mistakes, just as humans did. Even after killing Duju and the others, Okabe still couldn't accept what he had done. Whenever he remembered taking their lives, he felt sick, but there was nothing he could do to change it. He would have to carry that sin with him and continue moving forward. The village head then turned toward Okabe and the others and bowed deeply. He apologized again for the way he had treated them, and thanked them for protecting Rochelle's research. Because of them, he had finally understood the misunderstanding between himself and Rochelle's sister. She had believed that he hated her for being responsible for the collapse of their family, when in reality Rochelle had hidden the true purpose of her research because she didn't want to become a burden. The village head could only hope that Rochelle's love for her family had somehow reached her sister. Okabe listened carefully, but one detail caught his attention. The cause of the family's collapse, Rochelle's wound. Could that be connected to why she entrusted this flower to us? He asked the village head where Rochelle's sister was. Before the village head could answer, a massive shadow suddenly passed over them. Everyone looked up. A huge dragon hovered above the village, and riding on its back was the white-haired demon girl they had encountered earlier. Okabe's eyes widened in shock. You are! The white-haired demon warrior remained atop the massive dragon, looking down at the village with cold, unwavering eyes. Okabe and Shinomiya stared up at her in shock. immediately recognizing the woman who had once taken control of the prisoners from their entire class without suffering a single injury. Okabe tightened his grip on his equipment, his body tense. Even though we haven't been in this other world for very long, she's the woman who subdued an entire class of otherworlders and took the prisoners back without a scratch. Fear spread through the villagers as they realized who had arrived. Before anyone could react, a large group of monsters suddenly emerged and charged toward the settlement. The villagers panicked as the creatures rushed toward them, while Shinomiya quickly assessed the overwhelming number of enemies. Liana immediately wanted to help, but before they could move, the white-haired warrior urged her dragon forward. The dragon descended toward the approaching monsters, and its rider moved with incredible speed. She began cutting through the creatures one after another, her sword flashing through the battlefield as the monsters fell. The villagers' fear quickly turned into relief. The young boy recognized her as a knight, while his father revealed that she was Lady Arciela, the leader of the royal elite knights and regarded as the strongest swordsman among them. As Arciela continued slaughtering the monsters, the father explained that her swordsmanship was so beautiful, yet deadly, that she had earned the title Knight of the Ephemeral Flower. Once the last of the monsters had been dealt with, Arciela turned her attention toward the village. Her gaze immediately settled on the village head. The village head recognized her and called out her name. Without warning, Arciela swung her sword. The slash struck the ground directly beside him, causing him to lose his balance and fall. Arciela descended from the dragon and landed before him. She looked down at him with disappointment, questioning how he could have failed to protect even a single girl. The village head had no answer. He lowered his head, admitting that he had nothing to say in his defense. Arciela's gaze then shifted toward Okabe. Her expression hardened as she confronted him, suspecting that he was responsible for the destruction of the village. The village head immediately tried to explain that Okabe and the others were accompanied by the divine beast, but Arciela showed no interest in hearing excuses. From her perspective, the village had been burned, her kin had been killed, and humans were once again responsible. Convinced that humans were a calamity that needed to be eliminated, Arciela raised her sword and prepared to strike. She unleashed a barrage of invisible energy slashes toward Okabe. Okabe immediately reacted, activating to defend himself against the incoming attacks. Okabe gritted his teeth as Arciela's attacks continued, warning her that fighting him here would only drag the village into their battle. Arciela dismissed his concern and immediately launched another barrage of energy slashes from her sword. Okabe was forced to leap backward to avoid them. Liana and Pomera watched anxiously from a distance. Seeing Okabe being pushed into another battle alone, Liana prepared to rush to his aid. Shinomiya stopped her, however. Using her clairvoyant skill to observe Arciela's movements, she believed Okabe could handle the situation for now. Arciela continued attacking without even needing to swing her sword. Invisible slashes tore through the air toward Okabe. Slashes released without even swinging the sword. It must be some kind of magic. In that case, Okabe quickly activated Reflect. A transparent mirror-like barrier appeared before him, intercepting the incoming attacks and sending them away. Good. The mirror works. Arciela noticed the effectiveness of his defense and recognized Okabe from their previous encounter. She realized that he was the same person she had fought before and wondered whether he intended to challenge her as revenge. Okabe barely had time to react before Arciela resumed her assault. He repeatedly formed reflective barriers to block her attacks, but Arciela's swordsmanship gradually overwhelmed his defenses. With a powerful swing, she released a concentrated slash that shattered one of his barriers. Okabe's eyes widened. She cut through my reflection wall. Of course, a swordswoman of her caliber would be able to do that. The number of attacks increased rapidly. Arciela's movements became so fast that Okabe could barely distinguish her position. Slashes seemed to come from every direction, turning the battlefield into a blur. Okabe desperately tried to analyze her movements. Then Arciela suddenly appeared behind him. Her presence sent a chill through him. Before he could turn around, she calmly declared that it was over. Her sword flashed. Liana screamed Okabe's name as the blade struck him. Okabe collapsed, and the blue flower he had been carrying fell from his grasp. Arciela looked at her sword in confusion. There was no blood on the blade. Before she could understand what had happened, Okabe's body suddenly moved. He activated. The barrier surrounding his body had absorbed the attack, protecting him from the fatal blow. Shinomiya stared in surprise, while Liana couldn't believe Okabe had survived. Arciela narrowed her eyes as she recognized the technique. Okabe immediately counterattacked. A formless blade suddenly appeared and struck toward Arciela, forcing her to evade. Arciela was shocked to see that Okabe possessed a weapon similar to her own sword technique. Okabe stepped forward and prepared his invisible blade as he confronted her. Then he noticed the fallen flower lying on the ground. He bent down and picked it up. The moment Arciela saw the flower in Okabe's hand, her expression completely changed. She stared at it in disbelief, suddenly demanding to know why Okabe possessed that flower.